أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. طاسيم. تلك آيات الكتاب المبين. نتلو عليك من نبأ موسى وفرعون بالحق لقوم يؤمنون. إن فرعون علا في الأرض وجعل أهلها شيعا يستضعف طائفة منهم يذبح أبناءهم ويستحيي نساءهم إنه كان من المفسدين. ونريد أن نمن على الذين استضعفوا في الأرض ونجعلهم أئمة ونجعلهم الوارثين ونمكن لهم في الأرض ونري فرعون وهامان وجنودهما منهم ما كانوا يحذرون. صدق الله العظيم. جزاك الله خير. Takbir. Takbir. Inshallah, our young brother Batuhan will translate those verses from Surah Al-Qasas.
In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, these are verses of the book that makes things clear. First, to these, some of those storybooks that Pharaoh is the truth, but the people believe. Truly, Pharaoh elated himself in the land and broke up its people into sections, depressing a small group among them. Their sons he slew, but he kept alive their females, for he was indeed a maker of mischief. And we wish to be gracious to those who are being depressed in the land, to make them leaders in faith, and make them his.
Takbir. Brothers and sisters, please just a request, inshallah, if you can move a bit closer, because we are blocking the pathway, it's not trying to pass. You've got space here as well, so come closer, and inshallah we can carry it on. So, first question, why are we here today? Yeah, why are we here? To save Palestine, to save Al-Aqsa, to save Palestine. Why do we need to save Palestine? Why is it important for us? Yeah, why is it important for us? Yes, so as the brother Munir mentioned, it is where the Prophet ﷺ had his Isra and his Mi'raj. Isra meaning his night journey from Mecca to Al-Quds, Jerusalem, and Mi'raj meaning the Messenger of Allah, as our tradition tells us, that from the rock, and there's a masjid, dome of the rock built over that rock, the Messenger of Allah ascended to the heavens. Yes, it's a place of prophets and messengers. It's a place there of the righteous. It's a place that our companions were in, the companions of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. So why it's very important for us to gather, or some of us say, look, what does it do? Because we have been demonstrating, protesting for Islam. But the gathering here today is live streamed for our brothers in Gaza, our brothers in Al-Aqsa who are watching. We stand with you. So if you are watching, Assalamu alaikum to you brothers and sisters. And we are with you in your struggles and your pain. And we can dua and supplicate for you as well. This is the purpose of us gathering here today. So thank you for coming. Our young sister Safa Anwar, she's part of the scouts from Lewisham Islamic Centre, LIC Scouts, and she has a poem she wants to read.
A child of Palestine, silenced and beaten, ignored and forgotten. I am a child of Palestine. I am unimportant, I am irrelevant. You turn and look away, you are no friend of mine. I am a child of Palestine. You watch me suffer, but you do not feel my pain. You hear me cry, but my cries are all in vain. I am a child of Palestine. I am tortured and imprisoned. I am battered and frightened. I am a child Palestine. I have no bombs, I have no weapons, I have no control, I have nothing. Yet, you fail to call it murder, only because I am a child of Palestine. You call it war.
Takbir. Takbir. Thank you. Brothers and sisters, just to for our non-Muslim guests, Takbir means Allah is the greatest and greater than anything. And the reason why we say this in our gatherings here, so for us to realize that our Palestinian brothers and sisters who are watching us, Allah is greater than the tyrants. Allah is greater than the oppressors. Allah is greater than the criminals. So we're reminding ourselves that Allah is in control and victory comes to those who are patient and those who are oppressed. We have a friend of ours, Michael. Michael is part of the Medical Aid of Palestine. He's also part of Lewisham Anti-War. He's part of the network of standing up against oppression and racism. So he's here to say a few words of support for our brothers and sisters in Palestine. Michael.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this very important event. Now, my name is Michael, as Shaquille said. I'm here in a personal capacity, but I work for Medical Aid for Palestinians. And we have offices in the West Bank and in Gaza. So you can imagine that in recent weeks, what it's been like waking up every morning, not wanting to switch on my WhatsApp, wondering what may have done terrible news about my colleagues. Fortunately, they're all okay, but it came close at times. Now, what we know nothing about is the healthcare system in Palestine, so I'm going to focus on Gaza. Before the recent bombardment, we were already in a situation where 50% of basic medicines were down to a month's supply or less. That's simple, even basic things like paracetamol. And if you have a course of medical treatment where one component is out of stock, that means you can't proceed with medical treatment. So the result is that people often die through the lack of proper medication. We also have a pandemic in a place where social distancing is almost impossible. And COVID centres were targeted during the bombardment. We had a situation where 10% of the injuries for the recent bombardment involved or required major limb reconstruction. And we have a project which trains surgeons where we try to reduce as much as possible the permanent disabilities. We're still supporting people that were targeted in the Great March of Return by snipers. And it can take up to 4 years of surgery and rehabilitation. And that's one of the things we do. And you can imagine being disabled in Gaza it's bad enough. We have to fight our disabled friends, fight for their accessibility, their rights to be able to live a normal life, but imagine in Gaza it's not the most accessible place. Of course, the surgeons are using equipment that's well past its intended lifespan. They're re-sterilizing equipment, they're having to improvise. But it's easy to be distracted by the humanitarian situation. This is not a natural disaster. This is a man-made situation. This is the denial of healthcare to the people of Palestine, in particular to the people of Gaza, is part of the process of oppression. It's the responsibility of the occupying power to provide healthcare for everybody there. So it shouldn't be down to organisations like mine to provide that most basic healthcare that we're trying to do at the moment. So we also have to campaign. So we do have campaigns. We're calling on the Prime Minister, for example, to pursue the immediate opening of crossings. At the moment, there's a really limited amount of stuff that gets in and out of Gaza, even after the so-called ceasefire. The crossings are not letting everything through. We want him to rescind his comments about the International Criminal Court's investigation into the situation. We think it's really it's inappropriate that the Prime Minister should have been attacking the independence of the International Criminal Court. And we want the Prime Minister to make a public statement supporting genuine legal accountability for all violations of international law in the occupied Palestinian territories. And I'm going to I'll share afterwards the link for people to write to their MPs. I think I'll stop there, but thank you very much.
Clear. Clear. Thank you, Michael. We've got a point from a young lady, Leila Bari. She's part of our Elastic Scouts team, so she's going to read a poem.
Assalamu alaikum. A cry. A human cry on the wind reaches high. A human cry. A baby's cry. Pierces the heart. Pierces the mind of those with heart minds. A human eye sees the truth. The human heart feels the truth. A human cry on the wind reaches those with hearts and minds to hear. A human cry.
Brothers and sisters, before we carry on, there's a short video clip. I just want you to see that clip, I think produced by Islam Channel, and just for you to be aware of the history of Al-Aqsa specifically and why. No, can you put that on, please, yeah?
Basically,
so just for you to understand the history behind Al-Aqsa and why Muslims were more sensitive concerning Al-Aqsa on the 27th night of Ramadan. So the 27th night of Ramadan in our tradition, it's a special night. We call it night of Qadr Qadr. So while you are praying in our mosques and masajid, yes, the IDF forces went into Al-Aqsa complex, masjid. So I know most of the Muslims here, of course, understand the significance, but for the non-Muslims, I wanted to understand why Al-Aqsa is important to us in our history and tradition and why we were angry. We were angry. 27th night of Ramadan, when we heard the news of IDF forces going in and attacking worshippers, that caused anger in ourselves. So I want you to understand why the anger is there. Jazakumullah khair.
All I wanted to say, bro, is we all, Assalamu alaikum everyone, first of all of us have a duty and a responsibility, I'd say, as Muslims and also non-Muslims to end the tyranny and the oppression in Palestine and the entire region. All I want to say is thank you all for coming and free Palestine, free Palestine, free Palestine, free Palestine, free Palestine.
Takbir. Brother Mr. Rahman's come all the way from South Woodford to, take part in the gathering for Al-Aqsa. I'm going to request that we do him back as well. Okay, so mashallah. We've got a good friend of ours, Harold Wilson. Harold has been campaigning against racism in the London Borough of Lewisham and in the United Kingdom for many years. Close ally, close friend, close brother, and also a soldier as well. He's always on the front line in attacking racism. So Harold, a few words, please.
Free Palestine. Free Palestine.
Assalamu alaikum. Imam Shakil, Lewisham Islamic Centre, brothers and sisters in Palestine, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm touched, I'm very moved about the fact that I've been invited to this very important event. I'll keep this speech fairly brief, but essentially, I am 57 years old. Ever since I was 18, the cause of Palestine has been my cause. And for me, it's been quite an easy step to make, because from early on in my late teens, Imam Shakil said I've quite generously called me a soldier, but I have campaigned since the age of 18, 19 over the cause of anti-apartheid in South Africa. It came to me early on, and it was obvious that an injustice committed on the basis of racism, state violence, oppression, people requiring passports to move in their own country, subject to that oppression on the basis of a settler minority. So to me, when we look at Palestine today, it is an obvious parallel. Bombing of media buildings, electricity for 4 hours a day, poisoning the water supply, kidnapping, land grabbing, beatings. It's an obvious parallel. So to me, the cause of Palestine is my cause as well. And when on the demonstrations, when they say in our thousands, in our millions, we are all Palestinians, I say that as well. I'm a Palestinian. Okay, right. I would add the following as well, just two final points. Again, when we look back at Palestine, when we look at the revolts, when the Palestinians fight back, whether it be with rocks or rockets, me as a socialist, because I'm a socialist and internationalist, being a member, I've been a socialist worker since I was 18, we support unconditionally the right of the Palestinians to fight back. It's also worth noting, and this is the point I will end on, in 2011, during the Arab Spring, Benjamin Netanyahu said the thing that gave him the greatest fear for the future of the state of Israel was seeing the Arab masses rise. In Cairo, in Jordan, in Algiers, the whole arc across North Africa all the way to the Middle East. That was Netanyahu's nightmare. I want to give Benjamin Netanyahu more nightmares. So I am hoping that the masses in places like Cairo, that is the solution. Every time the Palestinians give us hope, inspire us, because they do. When they inspire us, they inspire other people as well. And I'm hoping that the masses across the Middle East will take inspiration from that. And Sisi This is the same Caesar who's in the peace deal now. He was one of the butchers of the Arab Spring. And I'm hoping that the masses take revenge on that. And I'll end on this. That link between the cause of Palestine and the black anti-racist struggle here, to me, is an obvious one. It's had a long history. In the 1960s, I'm sure some of you will know of the folk singer Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan approached the Black Power movement and said, Bob Dylan asked the leaders of the Black Power movement, I will support your cause if you support the cause of Israel. And of course, the leaders of the Black Power movement told him where to go. They were having nothing to do with it. So there's been a long tradition there. So on the Black Lives Matter demonstrations today, you will see the Palestinian flags. You'll see people wearing the badges because it's obvious. The link there is obvious. And long may it continue. Like I said, the cause of Palestine is my cause. I'll end it there. There was one other thing I was going to mention. There we go. Palestine lives.
Thank you, Harold. Thank you, Harold. Inspiring speech. And of course, struggle of the oppressed is our struggle. We stand with the oppressed. We stand with the Palestinians. We stand with those who are being oppressed because of their race. You know, we are with the oppressed. That's our deed. That's the teaching of the prophets and the messengers of Allah Almighty. Alhamdulillah, we have Councillor Tawseef Anwar. He is part of Lewisham Council. He's a speaker in Lewisham Council. And Alhamdulillah, he is a Muslim community member as well. So a few words from Councillor Tawseef.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Rabbi Sharah li Sadri. We gathered here when there was attack in Christchurch on mosque. Then we gathered down the road in church when there was attack on a church in Sri Lanka. Today we gathered here when there was attack on Al-Aqsa, the third holiest place for Muslim in the world, as you've seen in the report. No cold enemy will attack your worship places. That's what Israeli forces under the right-wing Israeli government has done it. In the midst of Ramadan, when people were having prayer there, we wholeheartedly condemn, and our thoughts and prayers are with those who were shot and injured in the mosque. We have over 200 deaths in this conflict. Out of them, there were 67 kids. 65 from the Palestinian side and 2 from the Israeli side. Our heart goes to all those mothers who've lost their child. They say smaller coffins are the heaviest ones. Their mothers must be thinking to grow them. They had a dreams to become them a doctor, engineer, and whatever in their dreams were. And they were sitting in their graves. I can talk a lot. I've been told from Shakil to sum it up in a very shortly. So going forward, from our community, I will say we need to focus on our political engagement. Whether you are Muslim or non-Muslim or activist who feel for Palestine. Our political parties, they know very well. Even in Labour Party, which is my party, we have in our manifesto to recognition of State of Palestine. David Cameron, when he was leader of opposition, he went to Gaza, and his own word, Gaza is the first open-air prison in the world, although he changed his stance when he became a prime minister. Again, because politicians, they forget their promises and word very conveniently. And it is our job to keep reminding them, to build up this political momentum. That's what our Palestinian brother and sister need. International community pressure. And let's not forget, keep shaming the leader of our Muslim countries who have not shown any courage to stood up for this injustice and this oppression and illegal occupation, which is internationally illegal. The Secretary General of the United Nations said
if any place on earth is a hell for the kids, that is Gaza. That is the word of Secretary of United Nations, Secretary General of United Nations. My first point is we need to ask our government to stop selling the arms to Israel. It is the law, it is the international law, it is the law of this country. We need to uphold the law. There is no sale of arms to any country where there is human rights violation. And that is happening. We're not saying only Israel. We always said that Saudi Arabia using the same weapon in Yemen, we should not sell it. It's not, we just stand for justice, not with our country or nation or one religion. And my second point is, my second point is the UK has hung their head in the shame, not supporting International Criminal Court to go in Palestine, in Gaza, in Jerusalem to investigate. We need to ask our government why this hypocrisy is there, why we are not supporting International Criminal Court to go and investigate the human rights violation, and UK have voted down it. That is a shame for UK government, and we need to keep writing Foreign Secretary, our MPs, and build up this momentum and the pressure. And lastly, I would say, whenever we talk about Palestine, Boris Johnson just a couple of days ago said in Parliament, they support the two-state solution. The first thing what you can do when you say the two-state solution, recognize the state of Palestine. That is the first step you can take. And then you can ask both parties to sit down and do the agreement. Of course, all of us want a peace. We want the region in the peace, the place where for centuries Muslim, Christian, and Jews lived together without any war and the bloodshed. I know there are some of our youths, whether they are Muslim or non-Muslim, they have been disciplined in their colleges and unis because they were speaking up for Palestine. Let's keep our eyes open, and any of them, they are subject to disciplinary action. There are a team of the legal advisors, they are challenging those universities and colleges. I know it's a difficult time to say these things, but I end my speech with saying, say the truth, even your voice shakes. Thank you.
Free, free. Free, free. Free, free. Takbir. 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 Sisters, please make a bit of space. Social distancing. You can come forward, but keep a bit of space. Yeah? Very important, please. Yeah, just keep a bit more space. Yeah? Sisters, move out of the way, please, for the passers-by as well. We mentioned Brother Mr. Rahman came all the way from South Woodford. Take part in our gathering today. We have a brother from Redbridge, trustee at Redbridge Islamic Centre, a member of former Federation of Redbridge Mosques and Organizations, Brother Wasim Ahmed, again, very active brother, and alhamdulillah, he's here, inshallah, to share a few words because of the passion he feels about our brothers and sisters in Al-Aqsa and Palestine. Fadal.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's a pleasure and honor to be here, mashallah. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Alhamdulillah, look, I'm here to talk about two main things, and that is resistance and patience or sabr. Now, we held our own little event outside Ilford Town Hall, and I don't know if you remember a couple of Fridays ago, the weather was unbelievably bad, right? And I thought it was going to be me surrounded by two Palestinian flags, and that's it. Because the weather was so bad, swirling wind and rain. Alhamdulillah, we had 1,000 brothers and sisters outside the town hall on a Friday evening when they could have been chilling out at home. That shows you how strong the Muslim community and non-Muslim community feel about this issue. And this Saturday, we're holding an event for the youth as well. Because although our brothers and sisters lost their lives, alhamdulillah, they have not lost their dignity. And if they haven't given up in 73 years, we've got no right to give up in another 73 years. Takbir! Free, free! Free, free! Free, free! I just wanted to say that, alhamdulillah, I've been fighting against injustices my whole life. And I think this is an opportunity for both the Muslim and the non-Muslim communities, and I'm talking about unity of purpose. I have not seen some of the things the optimists hope that we see around the world today. And I'm not talking about the Conservative Party. I don't give a rubbish about them. I don't even care about the Labour Party, no offence, brother, yeah? I'm telling you, these politicians are not going to solve Palestine for us. I don't even believe in a two-state solution. They just use that as an excuse to occupy more land. It should be like it was before 1948. One state, equal rights for all. We live together in harmony. Why do we need two states? And that's where people live. At the moment, what's the two states? You've got a few little Baptistans on the West Bank. You've got East Jerusalem, both of them being eaten up. And the Gaza is an open-air prison. What are we going to get out of that? Nothing. The only way, the only solution is one state, equal rights. And I'm saying the opportunity now is for us in this country to build our institutions and to build a counter-narrative, right? We all know, if you look at the newspapers, mainstream media, what do you hear day in, day out? Oh, and Gideon Levy said it, he's an Israeli journalist, this is not me. He said there are 3 reasons why people in Israel don't give a stuff. One, they believe deep down that they are the chosen people, right? So they don't care about anything else. Okay, that's the first reason. The second reason is they believe the only occupier in history who believe they're the victim. And not only are they the victim, they're the only victim. And the third reason why they don't give a stuff when they're sitting in their bars having coffee while bombs are going off in places like Gaza and West Bank, is the third reason is because they've dehumanized the Palestinians. Do not see them as human beings. If you don't see someone as a human being, why are you going to give them human rights? Why do you care? They don't care. The only solution is going to come from external. And if we really think that the United States government or the British government or the United Nations, or should we call it the United Mafia, is going to solve the problem, think again. Now look, I'm not saying we shouldn't push these people. We should push our MPs, our councillors, all of these people, because in the end, me, you, everyone here, the outcome is of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We are going to be judged on our efforts towards this cause, right? When you stand in front of your God on the day of judgment, you saw your brother and sister suffering, what did you do? And if you say, oh, I thought nothing would work, that's not good enough. You have to do whatever's in your power. So we have to empower our youth. If we're struggling in the schools, that's why we're holding a youth conference. We want our youth to go to school and say, no, this isn't good enough. I do not want a random presentation from someone called Solutions Not Sides. I want to hear the truth, and I want to be able to speak the truth, and I want to stand in solidarity with my brothers and sisters in Palestine, and in Uyghur, and everywhere else where Muslims are suffering, and non-Muslims for that matter. The school and the university is an absolute place where, from the outset, that's where resistance movements have come up from. Don't try and silence us, you're not going to do it. Free, free! Palestine! Free, free! Palestine! From the river to the sea!
Palestine will be free!
From the river to the sea!
Palestine will be free!
So my last message, and all the other speakers, sorry for taking up your time. I had this all written down, but I thought, you know what, I'm just going to wing it. So Allah, for my brothers and sisters in Gaza and in the West Bank, like I said before, we haven't given up. And we're going to use all means necessary, inshallah, within obviously the legal framework in this country, to help your cause. And we will never give up because you inspire us. You inspired us for the last 73 years, and you continue to inspire us. So whether you're young, old, whatever, do whatever you can, and inshallah, the reward is of Allah, the outcome is, and we'll hope and I pray that in my lifetime, I'm not as young as some of you, in my lifetime, Palestine will be free. Free, free! Palestine! Takbir!
Allah Akbar!
Takbir! Takbir! Free, free! Free, free! Free, free! Thank you, brother Waseed, Jazakallah khairan. And you know what? Our brothers in Palestine, I just want to remind our brothers in Palestine, what brother Waseed mentioned. You know, I mentioned Harold is a soldier. You're soldiers. We get our inspiration of Iman from you. Your stones and defense of Al-Aqsa and yourselves and your land and your dignity is like Dawood alayhi salam, David and Goliath. The IDF, the Goliaths, and you are the Davids. And you are our soldiers. So when you defend Al-Aqsa, defend yourself, you're inspiring us to stand with you. So peace be with you, brothers and sisters there. Inshallah, we have our Secretary Zilur Rahman, Secretary of the Trustees of LIC. Inshallah, a few words for him. Takbir! Takbir!
Bismillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, brothers and sisters. Just as I begin, in the last week, my daughter, who is 7, has been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. May Allah grant her shifa, inshallah. The reason I mention this, the reason I say this is because my wife and I have both looked at the situation of the people, the families, and of course the children in Palestine to help deal with this, because of course their experience, their suffering is much more difficult and much more severe than ours. And we see, as the brothers were just mentioning, that we take inspiration from the Palestinians in all aspects of our life. Even in this situation of mine, I'm taking inspiration from their strength. I'm taking inspiration from their patience. I'm taking inspiration from their perseverance. And of course, while we're on the topic of children, this massacre that we just saw in Gaza a week or two ago, and it was a massacre. So more than 260 people were killed. Of those, more than 60 were children. More of that were women. 30% of those were children. And thousands were killed and thousands were displaced. And this is the first round. This is the first cycle of death and destruction that's been wrought on the Palestinian people. And this is not a battle between two equal people or two equal entities or two equal powers. No, it's not. You've got on one side, you've got Israel, one of the largest armies in the world, one of the most powerful armies in the world, who has one of the most sophisticated weaponry and nuclear power. On the other side, and you've got this entity that's also supported by all the major superpowers of the world. And on the other side, you've got Palestinians. They don't even have their own airport. They don't even have their own navy. They don't have no standing army. Their army are the children who are throwing stones. How can this be a battle between two equal entities? How can they call this? It's not even a battle equal on the narrative or even on the wording, because they'll tell you that this is a conflict. All these couple of weeks you would have heard on TV, on the newses, on the BBC, on Sky News, and any other news outlet, media outlet, that you see that this is a conflict, the conflict between the Palestinians and the Israelis. This is not a conflict. How can this be a conflict? This was nothing more than ethnic cleansing. This was nothing more than butchering. This was nothing more than brutalizing one side, brutalizing the other, one side occupying the other, one side terrorizing the other. And this is what it is. And we need to be clear about this. And we need to be clear about the messaging and the narrative as well. And there are some who also say to you that this is a complex matter. Probably in this particular massacre, more than any other, I've seen loads of people come out, those that want to sit on the fence, those that want to remain silent, saying this is a complex issue. Let me tell you something. What is complex about racism? What is complex? What is complex about ethnic cleansing? What is complex about placing people? Because we saw this particular massacre start because Israel was seeking to, as they've done for the past 73 years, ethnically cleanse, and they were trying to engineer ethnically a particular area, Sheffield, next to Jerusalem. And what they're trying to do is make the number of Palestinians in the area of Jerusalem go down, and they're trying to increase the population of the Jews. Tell me what this is. Is this not racism? How can this be a complex matter? How can it be complex when people, innocent women, men and children are being bombed? How can this be complex? How can it be complex when they're attacking medical people and even medical personnel and even the hospital? How can it be complex when they're bombing media buildings, media outlets? What is complex about this? There is nothing complex about this. The only thing that's complex is your humanity, those that say this. And of course, in some respects, I think Brother Tolsif mentioned about the ICC, the International Criminal Court. And what they won't tell you is, and you hear so much from the other side, the Israeli side and those who support the Zionist entity, that this is, you'll hear one word, and I'm sure you all know what that word is, Hamas.
You'll always hear Hamas, Hamas, Hamas. Hamas is to blame for everything. But of course, is the occupation of Palestine commenced in 1948. Hamas began in 1989. So the occupation, the killing, the destruction, the displacement before Hamas existed is happening whilst Hamas is existing, and it will happen even if Hamas doesn't exist. So don't believe in this narrative. And going back to the issue about the ICC, when even Hamas have supported this case, saying that they would ask an international community, the international court, to come in and investigate crimes on both sides. So they're willing to open themselves out, saying if we've committed any acts of war, any unjustified acts, then we're happy for you to come and scrutinize that. But look, guess who has opposed this? Can anyone guess who's opposed this?
UK.
Israel. Hamas has agreed to do it, but Israel hasn't. And one further last point on Hamas. If you want to end Hamas, it's very easy to do. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to work out how to end Hamas. End the occupation and Hamas will cease to exist. It's as simple as that. And on the issue of Palestine, again, we shouldn't be afraid to stand on this side. This is the side of truth. This is the side of justice. This is the side of humanity. And we've seen a number of, although we've known this all the time, but we've seen more recently human rights groups, respectable, internationally recognized human rights bodies, such as the Human Rights Watch and Beit Salam, which is an Israeli human rights organization, have both come out and said that Israel is an apartheid state. It's an apartheid state. It's as simple as that, and there's no more hiding place for Israel on this. And we should make sure that we these two words we use in all our messaging on the issue of Israel and Palestine. That one is ethnic cleansing, and two, that it's an apartheid state. That it's not a democratic state. It's an apartheid state that has two rules for two different people, depending on your race and depending on your religion. And I'll wind this up because, of course, we don't have much time. But there are reasons to remain optimistic, and I'll name two reasons that I've seen in this recent massacre that took place. One is the awareness that we've seen. Although in previous cases, in previous incidents that's taken place in the West Bank, the occupied territories, or in Gaza, you've had more people that have been killed in previous wars. You've had more destruction in previous wars. They even used chemical weapons in previous wars. But why is it that this one has caused? Why does this one feel different? And I've asked everyone again, like Brother Rasim and others that are here. I've been following this, something that's been passionate to me from when I was a teenager. That it's been something that we've been following this, but this particular issue this time around has been different. And it's been different because not only have the Muslim, firstly from the Muslim side, I think there's a greater awareness from the Muslim community. Although it's something that we've always considered to be important, and there's no doubt about that. I think this time we've given it the due weight and attention that it deserves, and we must continue with this. And we've also seen this from the non-Muslim community as well. Even though the mainstream media don't want you to know about this, even despite that, everyone knows about it, and that's because a lot of people have lost confidence in mainstream media. A lot of people follow what's taking place on social media, and even if social media companies have attempted to suppress the sharing of what's taking place, they've not been able to do so. We've seen hundreds of thousands of people in this country alone demonstrating and marching week in, week out, and millions across the world. Alhamdulillah, we've got this event today, and we need to continue with this and hand this baton down until we need to continue it until we see a free Palestine. Because in some respects, what's taking place now is worse. You might say, how can it be worse? Because the bombing has stopped. It's worse because sometimes, because the bombing has stopped, our focus and our attention is moved away from that, and we can't allow that to happen. As I said, we must continue with that struggle for peace and justice for the Palestinians, In our lifetime, if we don't see in our lifetime, then we hand the baton over to our children for them to continue with that. And that then ties in with my last point, the second reason to remain positive, which is that next generation, the younger generation, because they've also been a sign of positivity that what we've seen. And I think Brother Wasim or Tawsif mentioned about youngsters raising this issue in their schools. And since the last 10 years, we've seen a barrage of laws being passed, anti-terror laws, prevent legislation, seeking to suppress Muslim children from being able to identify as Muslim, from being able to confidently articulate their religion, their faith, their beliefs and practices. And even despite that, 10 years of these policies, they thought that the Muslim children would forget Palestine. But what we've seen is that the children, the younger generation, are even more energetic than we were. They are demonstrating in their schools. We never did this. So that's a sign of positivity that the Palestinian issue we will never let it go. It's a struggle that we must never let go. We must inculcate that in our children as well. And the final point is I just wanted to say that I swear by Allah that there is no doubt that Palestine will become free, and that you should not be in doubt of that at all. Jazakumullahu khair.
Thank you, Sir. Jazakallah khair. Inshallah, we have with us our Sister Fawzia. Sister Fawzia is a community member of Lewisham Islamic Centre and also one of our volunteers. She's going to share a few words with you.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Just wanted to say a few words as a mother, because I have 4 children and my children are in their teens. So I'll just speak of my point of view as a mother. And as a child, I was brought up in Saudi Arabia. And as a child, I'm an old woman, I'm very old. And my time, we used to know history really well, and we used to have our songs about, Palestine. But slowly, people were forgetting, and I can see that the history has been changed, and now it's about 2 people fighting, or it's about conflict. Before, we don't even mention conflict. We used to say occupation, because this is an occupation. But then people forgot. But luckily now, because of the internet and the media and everything, no matter how much they want to hide, they can't hide. And the children nowadays are very, very clever, and they know the truth, and the truth will come soon. So I want to say to the MPs and the politicians, everything, our children are angry. And even not only our children, not only the Muslim children, also the young people who care about justice, who care about the oppressed, they are angry as well. So if you want to channel our children and our youth anger and our people's anger, if you want to channel it, you need to channel it in a nice way and take them in a nice way towards justice. Because what we are asking for is just justice. We are not asking for anything, just justice. You can't hide. You can change history, but people understand. And even that day, I was speaking to my children, and I was saying, look, from Morocco till north of Syria, till Iraq, till all they speak Arabic. All they have the same culture, the same language, the same way to look, the same dresses. Even they can be Christian, they can be Jews, but they look like each other, and they speak Arabic. And suddenly someone else, they don't like them, they have different culture, different views, different everything, and suddenly they came and they say this is our country, and we believe that? No, it's not true. It's not true. So my advice now to the MPs, they need to listen to us, and they need to work towards justice, whatever the justice is happening. Even if the justice will say that only one country, but the Palestinian, whether they are Jews or Muslim or Christian, treated like the outsider Jews, that's fine. But justice has to happen, and if we can manage to take all Palestine, I'm for it as well, because this is justice. Because Palestine was for the Palestinians. And the other thing as well, when they say rocket and Hamas and this rubbish. You can't fool us. The last 10 days of Ramadan, it's about i'tikaf. People want to do i'tikaf. They don't want to talk even to their wives and children. They just want to do i'tikaf. And you come and attack them while they are doing i'tikaf, while it's Ramadan, while it's the last days of Ramadan and Laylatul Qadr. You come and attack people who are praying. So what you can say against that? They didn't attack you, didn't come near you, didn't do anything to you. Why you are attacking them? And people can see. So I'm hoping now, maybe someday we will have justice. Thank you very much.
Brothers and sisters, inshallah, we're coming to an end. 3 or 4 speakers left, short speeches. So hopefully by 5 past 8 or 10 past 8 latest, we will be completed. Just quick reminder again, in terms of why are we here today? Why are we here today? Palestine. What message do we want to give to our brothers and sisters who are watching us from Al-Aqsa and Al-Quds and so on? What message do you want to give them?
We are with you.
We are with you. We stand with you. Your pain is our pain. Your struggle is our struggle. And we want to say, as Brother Zulu mentioned, we have yaqeen and certainty. Allah Ta'ala, Allah Almighty will give victory to our brothers and sisters who are defending Al-Aqsa, the blessed land of Al-Quds, the blessed land of Palestine. Takbir! Inshallah, we have with us Tony Cisse. Tony Cisse is a community member, and also he is part of the Labour Party in the London Borough of Lewisham. So a few words from Tony Cisse, please.
Brothers and sisters, brothers and sisters, I don't know whether I actually want to stand here and say I'm representing the Labour Party, but I'm a member of the Labour Party. And I think one of the things about the struggle in Palestine at the moment is that it is our duty to struggle wherever we are, whether it's in our workplace, whether it's in our community, whether it's in our home. And if you are, like me, a member of the Labour Party, it's also a struggle in the Labour Party. Now, last week, we managed to pass a motion in Lewisham West and Penge Labour Party condemning Israel, condemning the attacks on Al-Aqsa Mosque, calling for, in fact I'll put it here, which is quite a big thing, because many people will be probably disappointed at the lack of leadership that the Labour Party has provided, or the very weak. But however, we managed to get through, and we condemn Israel's violence against Al-Aqsa Mosque. We know that the TUC had a motion describing settlement building and Palestinian land annexation as a step towards a UN crime of apartheid. It welcomed, as a brother mentioned, the fact that the International Criminal Court is getting involved, and it asked for effective measures, including sanctions, we put on Israel. I think that is quite important, because what happened, people may or may not have signed it, but there was a petition that was circulating on the internet recently, calling on the government to discuss sanctions, bringing sanctions, especially on arms, but other things, against Israel. Now, when you sign a petition, if it gets to a certain number, if it goes past 100,000, then the House of Parliament have to debate it. Now, this one went to way above 300,000, and that debate is on the 14th of this month. And so organizations like the Friends of Al-Aqsa are asking everybody to contact their MP before the 14th, and to put pressure on their MP to vote for this motion. Now, motions in the House of Parliament are not to suddenly free Palestine. We know that. However, is a sea change. There is a mass of public opinion internationally that is changing. And wars are not won by weapons. You know, if wars are won by weapons, then Israel would have defeated the Palestinians years ago. Wars finally are won by public opinion. Now, what we can see is a huge sea change. People have mentioned it in speeches. We have children in schools. We have children being disciplined in our schools here because of their support for Palestine. The other thing that I can see is there is a sea change amongst the Jewish population, the people of Jewish faith. You know, I've been on Palestinian demonstrations, and one of the groups that you notice there are Jews. And there are many, many Jews who now are supporting the cause of Palestine. And if you go on the internet, you go on YouTube, you see some from the Orthodox Jews, the Hasidic Jews, but even other Jews. In America, it's the same thing. The young Jewish people are also starting to support Palestine. And the Israeli government is panicking about this. The Israeli government is panicking about this because their whole concept, they're trying to fool people that what they have got there is a Jewish state. It is not a Jewish state. You listen to the Hasidic Jews. What they say is the people who are Zionists are the least religious of all Jews. The religious Jews don't support this. So what is it? And a lot of people, now you are hearing people saying, it is a settler colonial state. Palestine was a British colony. If you study British colonial history, what they did was they took people from one part of the world and brought them to another part of the world to act as their go-betweens. In East Africa, it was the Asians. You had people from India, people from Pakistan, and so forth who went there, and they used them as a barrier. They used them. In West Africa, the same thing, or in some parts of Africa, it's the Lebanese, in some parts it was the Chinese. They used this. And what they have done in Israel, it is a settler colonial state. It is a state that is there to enforce Western policy in the Middle East. Nothing to do with religion. Nothing to do with religion. Because actually, when you look, there were never any real historical dividing lines between Muslims and Jews. If you look at where all the communities of all the Jewish communities that they had the most peace in, Morocco, Algeria, even today there are Jewish people, there are Jewish MPs in Iran, there's a synagogue in Kabul. Everywhere, all over the world, the place of refuge for Jews was not Europe, it was in Muslim countries. Because our religion talks about the people of the book. They have a protected status. So I think we have to be really clear about what is happening here. And I think the sister also mentioned, you know, the people, when people talk about anti-Semitism, what is a Semite? What is a Semite? A Semite is an Arab or a Jew. There is no racial category of Jews. It is a religious belief. And yet, what has happened is that it is the Europeans and the Eastern Europeans and the Americans who have come in and acted as agents of a settler colonial state. And that settler colonial state is there to ensure that they can control the Middle East. Anyway, I think I better finish because otherwise we'll But I think it is really good to see people today, and all I would say is free Palestine! Free Palestine!
Free Palestine! Tony. Thank you, Tony. I think Tony mentioned a very good point for us to kind of like just remind ourselves. I think they look and remind me when the Spanish Inquisition started in Spain and the Muslims and the Jews are targeted in the Inquisition. Where did the Jews go to? Sultan Bayezid? Yeah, the Ottoman Khalif said, look, you're welcome here. So as Tony mentioned, we're not anti-Jews, we're anti-oppression, we're anti-crime, we're anti-tyranny. So that's the values that we are coming with, that we want, inshallah, everybody to understand it, inshallah, in our community and others, inshallah. We've got our young brother, he's a community member and staff member, Muhammad Jama, who's got a point about ministry.
your armies, all your fighters, all your tanks, and all your soldiers, against the boy holding a stone, standing there, all alone. In his eyes I see the sun, in his smile I see the moon. And I wonder, I only wonder, who is weak, who is strong, who is right and who is wrong. And I only wish that the truth had a tongue.
Thank you. Inshallah, last two brothers and sisters. Our young brother Ahmed Hussein, Scouts leader, a few words, inshallah, then one more after that, and then we will conclude, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum, may peace be upon you all. Free. So we're here today because of the recent and the ongoing destruction that Israel has meted out on the Palestinians. And it's now, come on. This is what we need to see.
Free. Palestine. 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 See there. Inshallah.
I guess I don't need to talk. Alhamdulillah. So we're here today after the latest and the ongoing destruction that Israel has meted out on Palestinians. And obviously it is now time to rebuild. It's time to build, not just for the people of Gaza who've seen their homes and their hospitals destroyed, not only the people of East Jerusalem, of the West Bank, who are being kicked out of their homes by gunpoint at the end of a gun, even today, even still to this day. They are the only ones who need to build. We here today, we also need to build. But what do we need to build? What do we need to build? This is what we need to build. You are who we need to build. You are who we need to build. Why do we need to build our people? Because people, it is people who change the course of history. It's people who change the course of history, and that is what is needed at this point in time. And it is people who are organized, who are united, who can change the course of history. But what does it mean to be organized? Alhamdulillah, gathering like this is organized. Alhamdulillah, the petitions that are going around, though that is being organized, but yet that is not enough. So what do I mean by being organized? I mean, we need to stitch this cause into the very fabric of our society. We need every masjid, every madrasa, everywhere we know to put the cause of Palestine first. Alhamdulillah, let me just give you an example. Our madrasas, why did they come to be? Sorry, I think it's better, yeah. So think about how madrasas came to be. Think. We needed Quran studies, we needed Islamic studies, so our madrasas prioritized that. We have reached a point where we need ummah studies, we need advocacy studies, we need every Muslim child in this country to have the knowledge, to have the confidence to go into their schools and educate their peers about what is happening in Palestine and what they need to do. That is the point we have reached. We need to institutionalize the cause of Palestine into our mosques. What can our mosques do? Well, firstly, what is a mosque? Is this a mosque? No, it's a building. We are the mosque. We Muslims of this community, we are the Lewisham Mosque. We are the ones who need to engage with our schools, our governors, our teachers, our head teachers. We are the ones who need to engage with our councillors, with our politicians, with anyone who has any social influence. We are the mosque. We need to engage. We need to institutionalize for the sake of our next generation. Why do I mention the youth? Why have all of our speakers today mentioned the youth? Because, in case you don't know, Brother Wasim mentioned, for example, a group called Solutions, Not Sides. They're being pushed in schools because they have a pro-Israel bent. We have organizations like the UK Lawyers for Israel who keep shooting down anything that is neutral anything that is objectively, factually true about Palestine. So recently, just this week, they knocked down an old video on the BBC website about the Palestine cause. Sometime last year, I think it was, they persuaded Pearson Publishing to rewrite their history books. And on top of all this, we have the Secretary of State, Gavin Williamson, who has the nerve to tell schools that they are politically neutral spaces, when he himself, in 2018, as the Defense Secretary, stood in front of Zionists and said, I am proud of the role that the UK played in the birth of Israel. He has the nerve to say that schools are politically neutral spaces. And this is the stage where we are at. We, the people, we, the masjid, we, the Muslims, have a duty to push back. If we want to see a free Palestine, we must push back for the sake of our youth. If we choose not to push back, we choose to allow the occupation to continue. We have a choice. Doing nothing is not a choice. We have a choice, and we must make that choice. Stitch this cause into the fabric of our society. Talk to Imam Shakil, talk to any of the speakers today. We must work together on this. That is the only way forward. Jazakumullah khairan.
Inshallah, we'll come to the end. Haydar. You know, revenge is coming to your kids, yeah? Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Inshallah, brothers and sisters, we're coming to the end. Inshallah, we've got a video, inshallah, and we just see, inshallah, it's an Islamic chief, Islamic song. Then we'll have a concluding speech from our Imam Ashraf Damus. Imam Ashraf, at the end of your speech, if you conclude with a supplication and dua for our brothers and sisters in Palestine, please, inshallah. No one can tell us.
If you come on this side, you can see. Free.
Palestine!
Free.
Palestine!
Free.
Palestine!
Free.
Palestine!
Takbir. Takbir.
Allahu Akbar!
They cannot break us. They cannot shake us. Patiently waiting for guaranteed freedom. You can take our heart, but we will remain strong. Cause Allah's on our side. He's where we belong. Palestine, wiped off tears from upset and eyes. Palestine, Jannah waits for your innocent life. Palestine, we'll be free at Palestine. Oh, we feel it, we'll feel your pain. Palestine, we'll be free at Palestine. Oh, believe in the one who protects your faith. You can do no harm, even with your bombs. You have the big tanks, but we have Allah. You are the tyrant through all your violence. We have Ummah, and we won't be silenced. Palestine, wipe off tears from those second eyes. Palestine, Jannah waits for your innocent lives. Palestine, we'll be free at Palestine. Oh, we feel it, we'll feel your pain. Palestine, we'll be free at Palestine. Oh, believe in the one who protects. in the eyes of the children is the courage of millions. Rise up, Palestinians, if you call on what it says. Palestine, Palestine, we'll be free, Palestine. Oh, we feel your pain, your pain. Palestine, Palestine, we'll be free, Palestine. Oh, believe in the one who protects your faith.
Brothers and sisters, inshallah, for me, Jazakumullah khairan, thank you very much for attending. Inshallah, may Allah bless you all. Please keep the reminder, the struggle concerning our brothers in Palestine, in Al-Aqsa, in Al-Quds alive. And inshallah, thank you for me for turning up. Our guest speakers, Harold, Michael, Council Tafsir, Ahmed, Wasim, everybody else, Brother Rahman, who attended, and our youngsters on the post. Thank you to all. I'm going to leave you with Imam Ashraf, who's going to do a concluding speech and reminder. And inshallah, he's going to make dua and supplication at the end. Takbir. Takbir.
So firstly, just to speak about the people, the Palestinian people. And I can only speak from my capacity as an imam. So today we have those that are speaking from political capacities, from activist capacities, and so I'm here speaking from the capacity of an imam and from the tradition of Islam. And the situation of the Palestinians, when we look to the Palestinians, we should not see a nation, nor should we see a people. We should not see a divide, but we should see custodians of a holy land. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed those people to be the custodians of that particular land. That does not mean that it is an issue of nationalism. When we call for a free Palestine, we are not calling for a free land. We are not calling for a free people. We are calling due to the sacredness of that place, to us as believers, to the Christians as believers, and to the Jews as believers. As Al-Aqsa, Jerusalem, Palestine is a holy land for all of the people of the world, not just for the Muslims. And we call for a free Palestine again, not because of the people, but because of the oppression. Just we call for the freedom of any oppressed people. And so our struggle for the people of Palestine is a struggle for all oppressed people. And some will say, why are we more vocal about Palestine than we are about other places? Again, because of the sanctity of Jerusalem and the land to those who have the belief of Islam, Christianity and Judaism in their hearts. Secondly, when today listening to people speak, and when you watch the media coverage of what's happening in Palestine and other places, Yemen, parts of Africa, parts of the subcontinent, parts of Europe, happening here in the UK to some extent as well, when you hear of murders taking place and oppression taking place, and the reports inform us that these people have died. But the reality is, if we can watch these things idly and we don't feel moved, it's not those people who have died, it's us. Allah tells us when speaking about those who have no belief, no purity of belief in their hearts, He says, أَمْوَاتٌ غَيْرُ أَحْيَاء, that these are people who are dead in their hearts. They're not alive. You may see them in lifelike forms. They move, they interact, they are animate. But the reality is their hearts are dead. And if we can see people being murdered, children being murdered, people having their homes taken away from them, we can see people starving, hungry, we can see the state of the world today, and we feel unmoved, and we still have the same drive to chase after the luxuries of this life, then the heart is the only thing where death has become present. And it's something that we need to reflect upon. Thirdly, as our brother mentioned, the Arab Spring and Netanyahu, when he expressed his fear and the anxiety that struck the Zionist state, oppressive state of Israel with the Arab Spring, something came to mind, and it's something which was called out by the masses in Egypt, and this was during the elections of Morsi, when Morsi was he was giving his speeches running for the elections, and the people were crying out in the streets of Cairo, crying out in their thousands, if not tens, 20s, 30,000. They were saying, Al-Quds Rayhin Shuhada bil Malayin. And now this is something which is very, very significant. They were saying that we are going to march to Al-Quds in our millions. We are going to march to Al-Quds to liberate it in our millions. Why is it significant? Because you're talking about third, fourth, fifth generation people who did not actually witness what took place in Palestine with their own eyes, although perhaps they have relatives who passed away. And I am honored to say that one of my relatives passed away fighting against the oppressive Zionist state in the 60s and 70s. But the people, the young people, what was being articulated on their tongues was the feelings they had in their heart for a free Quds, a free Palestine. And that's what struck fear into the oppressive Zionist state of Israel. That even after 3, 4, 5 generations of destructive devices being unleashed onto the masses, when the opportunity was given to them, they still called for a free Palestine. And this takes me to my final point, and it's a point that I heard from a Palestinian, something which I heard from a Palestinian. He said that when you look to a river, it's very easy to assume that the river is dirty, but the river is actually pure. What has become dirty is the top layer of the river. You remove the top layer of the river, you find the source of the pollution, you remove it, and the water flows. The water's pure. And that water is us, the masses. The purity of our hearts remains intact. But unfortunately, the top layer has become polluted with the polluted leaders, whether they be politicians, whether they be corrupted spokespeople, whether they be people following their lower desires, the stomach, the private part, and so on and so forth, over the principles that make us human. When that layer is removed, the purity of the mass remains. And it's important for us to keep that purity. And we live in a time where we are distracted. As humans, we are distracted. Distracted by our smartphones, distracted by our TVs, distracted by the internet, distracted by our pockets, distracted by all of the multiple colors and neon lights that we're surrounded by. These things distract us from that which makes us human. We need to distract ourselves, and we need to refocus on that which is important. And we don't have to look far. There are struggles taking place in the UK, struggles taking place in Europe, and more importantly today, the struggle of Palestine. And so, to my brothers and sisters in Palestine, the first dua I make, as I've been asked to make the dua, the first dua I make is that I am from the people who march with those who are marching towards justice when the day that justice comes. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep my heart clean and to keep my intentions pure and to protect myself from the possible corruption that can take place, because we can all fall victim to it. And then I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep my community pure and to keep my community safe and to keep my community firm upon the principles of justice. And then I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide those who are still yet to see the truth to the truth. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to open the eyes of the blind and to open our eyes further. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to aid those who are oppressed, not only in Palestine, but in Yemen and in all areas of the lands wherein there are oppressed people, as there are those that we know about and those that we don't know about. And as our brother mentioned earlier, yes, putting pressure on politicians is necessary. Putting pressure on those who have public leadership places is necessary. But what's more important and what's more necessary is that we start to change ourselves. Change starts from the inside and it starts to radiate externally. If we are going to speak about those who are not doing what they should do externally, and we're not focusing on our internal, then we are being hypocritical. We need to look at our community, look at our household, look at our society, and we need to start to work on ourselves, and eventually we will see the light of our energy, the light of our actions radiate and affect globally with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us and accept our standing here, even though it's very little, and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to free the people of Palestine, the custodians of Al-Aqsa, and our brothers and sisters globally, wherever they may be, those that we can see, those that we can't see, those that we know about, and those that we don't know about. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.